There you go. See, I always like that when that hits, especially when you do all these different intros. So I enjoyed that one. Welcome everybody. It's great to be back. This is our kickoff session for our Elevate Your Voice, Make It Matter series. Now, this workshop series has been brought to you by Stageclip and IEO Lab. Stageclip has been sharing life's biggest moments with institutions and graduates since its inception. And of course, that moment is graduations, often life-changing for so many of us, especially when generations have never been to university. And at that one moment, this one individual from that family graduates, and all of a sudden, a whole generation is changed. So, welcome everybody. This panel session is titled Elevating Student Passions Through Leadership and Entrepreneurship. And of course, it's been sponsored by Higher Ed Social. And we have a great guest who's joined us from Higher Ed, the founder, Andrea. Andrea, welcome. Higher Ed Socials is the world's largest community for social media managers and digital communication professionals working in higher education. Thank you, everybody, for joining this panel, and everybody who's going to be viewing, watching the replays going forward. This is such an exciting series, one I'm really proud to be part of and joined with, because we've had an incredible year that's been life-changing for so many of us. And I want to start with a quote, which was relevant even before COVID, and it was by Yuval Noah Harari. In order to keep up with the world of 2050, you will not merely need to invent new ideas and products, but above all, you'll have to consistently reinvent yourself. So with that, I'd like to first introduce Rhett Power and start with him. Rhett, welcome to the series.
Well, thank you, Wasim. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to this conversation. We're going to have a lot of fun today, and hopefully help people, understand, where they're going and what the opportunities are.
Rhett, you're a number one thought leader on entrepreneurship. I think is 360. You're an MG 100 coach. You've got your own TV series going at the moment, and you've been in numerous publications. I think you know a thing or two when it comes to the future of work and what it requires for leadership and entrepreneurship. Seeing what everybody's been through this year, we say young people fuel our economies and are the future. What do you think the hardest challenge is going to be for these young people going forward to make that reinvention and make that impact? Because we're facing some of the biggest challenges we've ever faced. And what's your opinion on these young people, what they're going to be facing?
Well, I have two boys, two teenagers, and I'll tell you that what's happening, which I'm just actually fascinated by. Last summer, my oldest had his first summer job, and it was a remote job. And that to me just blows my mind that a 17-year-old is actually working remote for a summer job. And I think that is really telling as to what the future of work is going to be. When I came out of school in the 90s and in the 80s, we had a vision of work, which was go to the office, sit in your cubicle, or do whatever. It was a sort of a traditional model. Kids today, they don't really have to think of work in that same way. And I think that's exciting. It's scary a little bit because I think it probably brings a little bit more uncertainty as to what your career will be. But I think it's exciting. I mean, everybody that I know that has graduated in the last few years, I've got I've got some godchildren, some kids that young people that I'm really close to, and they're all working remote. One works for Capital One, one works for Google, one is at Cisco, and so they're living all over the country, and they're working for these companies that are not anywhere close to where they live. So I think that's exciting. Again, a little scary, but I think there's just the way we're looking at work and the way that work is going to happen for a lot of people, a lot of young people, is just going to be completely different. Now, how we prepare them for that, I think there's a real conversation about the education system and how we are in university and college preparing people for that new way that we're going to do things. But it means that you're going to have a lot of freedom of choice of where you want to live. It means you're going to have a lot of freedom of moving around, and I think people are going to be working for multiple companies perhaps. So there's just I think it's exciting. A little scary for me as a 50-year-old, but uh, for a 20-year-old coming out of school, I think that's exciting.
Amazing, Rhett. No, I agree. I think we're in this pivotal moment where we can really redefine the last century in a whole completely different way in the next 10 years. Tara, welcome. Dr. Ruttley, of course, is a space scientist who you may be aware of, and she was also a astronaut finalist and a neuroscientist and an engineer. Tara, welcome to the series.
Hi, good to be here. Hi, everybody.
Tara, what's your opinion on the same question? Young people now who are going to have to face these challenges and I feel are going to be change makers, what's going to be really difficult for them to get through and how are they going to overcome that?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing that new graduates who are making their way out need to get their arms around is situational awareness, right? We're getting more and more global, more than ever. We're being introduced to new cultures. We're being introduced to new gender identities. We're being introduced to new languages, new ways of economics. So it's broader, it's bigger than when I was growing up in Louisiana, and so I feel like situational awareness is important, and how they would obtain that kind of state of being would be to explore. And so I'm a big proponent of hands-on, getting out there, experiential learning, trying new things. Travel when you can, even if it's local, get out in your community, look around corners, meet people that you wouldn't otherwise meet, go out of your way to learn something new about the other person. Um, in that same vein, I would say that I am a STEM background person, right? I come from STEM, but that's a relatively recent term. That wasn't anything I've ever heard when I was growing up. I just knew I wanted to work for the space program, and then I just figured out what I had to do that. But my second love was archaeology, always in the back of my mind as a kid, and as an adult, when I started doing this space thing and I got involved in space, I decided to go back and get an archaeology degree. And what that really was anthropology. And it taught me about the humanities and social sciences in a way that as a STEM person, I'd never heard. I'd always heard the biology of how humans function and why the brain does what it does. But adding culture and location and tradition and social events makes us a very complicated community. We're a complicated species. And I think that as we get out and as new graduates get out and navigate the world or even their first career, it's not always about them. They need to be able to see the balance and see the other side and what someone else is thinking, and really, really listen and really, really think it through before opening their mouths to act or to respond. And it's constant learning. And it's constant. If you can do that, you'll be a great diplomat. You'll be a great negotiator. You'll be able to speak up for yourself, use your voice to advocate for yourself and for others. And really, that's what we need to make the biggest impact in the world today. There are some major global issues that can be resolved. And I choose to resolve these global issues through the space program any chance I get. And so find your passion, get out there, understand the world, and find out where you can fit in and help make the change. Even if you're fresh out, get out there and listen, pay attention.
Well, Sim, can I add on to that? Because I think I think you made a really powerful point. Um, my kids have grown up overseas. We've spent a lot of my adult career overseas. If you get a chance to go into something like the Peace Corps and volunteer, live overseas, learn another language, it is going to set you up really, really well to understand the world. I mean, you're living in an unprecedented times. We're in such a global economy, a global world right now, and the more you can navigate that world with a language or other culture, the more valuable you're going to be to an employer, the more valuable you're going to be to a company, the broader your world view is going to be. So Tara, I think that's a great point. Really great point.
Thank you. Yeah.
Then I'm going to add to that then, Rhett and Tara, that I absolutely agree. Andrea, welcome. You're the founder of Higher Ed Social. We've heard what Tara and Rhett have just put out there. And of course, my original question was in regards to young people and what challenges they're going to face and how they overcome them. But going on what they've said, I absolutely agree. It's a global world. You can have someone in Africa connecting with a kid in the Middle East, connected with a kid in Asia, and someone in the US, and they can start a startup and they can go and do something incredible, right? And they could have never physically met. With the work you do and the people you work with, and especially as we know how important social media is, good or for the bad, how important do you think the communication part is in that, considering that is what you essentially do every single day?
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you look at sort of the course of human history, right, all the great revolutions have centered around our ability to become better at communication, right? We got a printing press, and all of a sudden, learning came out of, the churches and the elites only, and we were able to get learning out to the masses, right? Books became mass produced. Transportation, being able to bring people together. Communication's always really been at the heart of that. And there has honestly never been a better time to be alive in thinking about how many people you can communicate with, right? Even 25, 50 years ago, your sphere of influence, your social circle was very small, right? Statistically, people didn't travel very far from home. Especially here in the United States, we just kind of stayed local, and your sphere of influence stayed, relatively small. But with social media, the ability to make those connections across the world, both with peers, but with employers, you are truly competing against 7.5 billion people on the planet, right? And that number keeps going up every day. And so how are you going to get through the noise to promote yourself, to find opportunities? You're no longer limited to just your cities and where you're at. I think that's something that came out of the pandemic that I hope we take going forward is, great, wonderful talent can be everywhere. And our companies, this sort of migration to the cities that we've seen, especially here in the States, right? A lot of our population lives in cities because that's where the opportunity is. But are we going to see, young people, have more freedom in where they choose to locate their lives, right? The ability to have a life that's not necessarily centered around work, right? We're not here to just pay bills and die, right? So how can work become more integrated in our lives when we no longer have to go to a specific location to do work every day, right? That's one of the things I've loved most about being able to work remotely in the pandemic. And I feel like I'm more efficient. I get more work done, and I've been able to collaborate with a ton more people, which I think is fantastic. I think if young people can get comfortable with constantly having to reinvent themselves, right? You're constantly meeting new people. You're constantly going through change, and your career is going to evolve. I think we've told them growing up, if you do X, then you're going to get Y. If you go to college, you're going to get that job. It's not linear like that anymore. It's definitely not. But there's opportunity in that. So don't be scared of it. Reach out to that person you met on Twitter. I have hired people because I met them on Twitter. I have been offered jobs by people who have met me on Twitter and thought that I was doing something really cool. So there are so many opportunities out there. Embrace it and run with it.
I agree, and I think one of the things that we found, Clubhouse came out last year, and I know myself, Tara, Rhett, we've all utilized it. Sarah, I'm not sure if you have, and Andrea, you have. The great thing about Clubhouse, specifically at that moment, was we had the social media where you connect through Zoom, you connect through Twitter, but all of a sudden, audio, hearing someone's voice, right? So you've got away with the followers and everything. It is literally you're on stage and you're communicating and you're listening to their voice, you're listening to their intent, and you get to then resonate. And if you resonate, you all of a sudden have that connection. And it was incredible because it just, I think, of course, we had a lot of people at home at the time due to the lockdowns, but so many people connected who would have never met around the world through that. And that was an example of that. So With that, then, I'd love to come to Sarah. Sarah, welcome. Sarah, you're a graduate student. You're also the digital media communicator for FSU. Welcome. You know, this conversation that we're having now is about people like yourselves, because the whole workshop series, everything we put together it was panels and workshops coming together with thought leaders and experts, but ultimately working with the future change makers like yourself, right? It was all about having people like you impacting not just the world in your sphere of influence, but also the experts who are going to be working with you in developing communication and professional skills and how to get your brand out there. So with that, Sarah, welcome. I'd love to hear from your perspective. How do you see young people changing this next decade?
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Yeah, that's a question that I've thought a lot about through this entire year. So did undergrad at Florida State, immediately went into my master's program because I graduated in May of 2020, and I was like, well, who the heck's going to hire me in the midst of this pandemic? And so I thought, what a better time to just go right into it. So I immediately went into my integrated marketing communication master's program. And so I had all these, I was really in the thick of it. You know, I had learned all of these new things and how to communicate in person and effectively through all these different experiences. And then it's like, oh, the whole world is shutting down. So we have to start from square one and start over. And in the midst of that, I got hired at the FSU Alumni Association as a graduate assistant. So I was a graduate assistant for communications, and we have Seminole clubs here. So if you move to Boston, if you move to California, there's a Seminole club there full of FSU alumni who are willing to connect with you, hang out with you, network with you, things like that. So I was essentially networking with and communicating with 50 plus Seminole Club leaders. But yes, I could pick up the phone and call them, but also everyone is trying to do that all at one time, and everyone is freaking out because things are changing. So it's really I'm being completely honest, I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of put myself in an uncomfortable situation because I really, really think that that's how you grow. And you grow through uncomfortable situations, and you grow through affliction and adversity and things like that. And yes, the pandemic was and it still is really rough. We're still going from in person to COVID times to now learning how to be back in person again at the office. So I really do think that the future of students now is to be ready for roadblocks and to have adaptability in your skill set, because being adaptable can just take you so far. And even if you're not sure what you're doing, but you can show that you're willing to learn and that you're willing to push through to meet your goals, to get a product or a project finished. I think that just shows a lot. So just being willing to, especially asking for help. I think that's my biggest, in conclusion, I think that's my biggest thing right now, is that it's okay to ask for help. Because I think even if you're 75 years old, you're still going to need to ask for help sometimes. So yes, being fearless, I think, and getting out of your comfort zone is so key, especially in times like this. So yes, that's a great question.
Amazing, Sarah. Rhett, then following on from what Sarah's saying, we know two things. One, we know we're going to have to consistently reinvent ourselves. And the other thing we do know is we can be certain that everything can be uncertain. And in that time, if things are going to be uncertain, what do you feel in terms of experiences you've had and insight on the value of leadership, with these new realities these students are going to face? What do you think they're going to have to do? You yourself are the founder of Courageous Leadership. What does that mean for these students?
Well, I want to answer your question and not answer your question, I think. I think it comes down to network, right? Several people here talked about a little bit about the power of that network. And I think that's in tough times and in good times, it always comes back down to how well you network with people and the power of that. I mean, I've like you, I've been offered jobs. I've gotten jobs because of it. I've gotten consulting work because of it. I've gotten jobs early in my career because of it. And the blatant truth about the world is that's how it works. It's who you know, how well you network, how well you keep up your relationships, how well you you grow your professional network and your personal network. And I think that above everything else, I mean, I like what Tamara's saying about being fearless and getting out of your comfort zone, but work on your network, grow your LinkedIn, your LinkedIn, engage with people on LinkedIn that you think can help your career, that can actually, that's people that you can learn from. Don't be afraid to reach out to people on social media, just because they're a thought leader or they have a lot of big profile, they're older, they're more successful. Engage with them on social media. Look, we pay attention, and I engage with people who engage with me, and so don't be afraid to engage with people like us on the panel, just because we work at NASA, or we run a company, or we're a founder of an organization. Like, that doesn't matter. You can still engage with us. That's why we're on social media. And the more you're willing to do that, the more you're willing to get out there and talk to people and engage with them, the more likely you are to get through tough times or uncertain times or even really good times. So I just, I have and I'll cut it off because I can be long-winded, but I have a friend who's, we graduated from college at the same time. He was always the class clown. People didn't think he was going to do much in life, but he's one of the most successful realtors in my state, because of his network. He goes to every event. He goes to every organizations event. He's out there all the time, meeting people, talking to people, putting himself out there. And you got to put yourself out there in this world in order for things to happen for you.
I agree. It is that initial momentum that carries forward, and it just opens the doorways. Action, people talk about inspiration and motivation, but it's ultimately the action that then catalyzes everything coming your way. Tara, I'm going to come back to you then. We've talked about all these things. We've talked about network. I want to give an example. When me and Tara first spoke, and we had a Zoom conversation, I asked her, look, pharmacists, what do they do in NASA? Do they do anything with NASA? And she's like, actually, no, they get involved. And then as you talk to Tara, and she's like, well, and then this is stuff you don't think about. I qualified as a pharmacist, and who would have thought pharmacists have anything to do with space? You just don't think about it. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't spoken to Tara, and Tara hadn't said that. And with that being said, Tara, those networks and those relationships, Rhett's touched on it, Sarah's touched on it, Andrea's touched on it. How important were they when you were going through the process of graduating and deciding, because you had a passion, right, from a young age to be an astronaut? How much were those networks important, those conversations important in taking you there? And where did you see the leadership? Was it from people who supported you? Was it yourself? Where was leadership in that process?
So that's such a great question, and I'm laughing because I never realized any of it when I was in it. Right, when I just knew what I wanted to do, and I would write to NASA, ask how I would do it. How do I do this? What do I need to do? Go to library. I know I need to get a PhD. I need to do these things, and so I have now, from start to finish, ended up pretty much where I wanted to be, which is great. In that process, it didn't, of course, it didn't go, that was bouncing between the boundary lines, as I was getting there. And I would bounce a little bit this way, and someone would say, you should kind of think about doing this. I'm just, going to suggest that, for example, I wanted to be a biologist. I was, science is my love. So I was in undergrad getting my biology degree at Colorado State University. And when I was doing that, I was also in some space clubs just to stay connected, but I was the only biologist in these engineering clubs. So what I learned was that to get some of my ideas across, I needed to make friends with these engineering students. And I did. So they helped me build, the hardware and the kind of ideas. They helped me bring them to life, these thoughts that I had. And I got to know them and I got to learn the machine shop. And at the end of my undergraduate degree, I was ready to apply for my PhD in neuroscience because that's what I really loved. And they stopped and said, you should really think about applying to a mechanical engineering degree, a master's program. I said, why on earth would I do a master's in engineering? Like all my life, people told me if I didn't want to work for NASA, I had to be an engineer. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be an engineer. But they didn't let up. They suggested it a few times. And so I said, fine, I'm just going to do it. And I did, and I got in, and I'm like, well, I got in. I guess I'll take this as a sign. And that's how I ended up getting a master's in mechanical engineering. And then, so I bounced that way. And then ultimately, it's really tough to get a job at NASA, and they weren't hiring. They were in a hiring freeze. And but I submitted my resume anyway, and they called me as soon as I was almost ready to graduate with my master's. And they said, we're starting a new division called the Biomedical Sciences, the Biomedical Engineering Division. It's in the engineering directorate. Will you come to work with us? Because we need you. We need your background in biology. We need your background in engineering. Will you come and build exercise equipment and medical equipment for the International Space Station? And I thought, well,
yeah.
Like, okay, where do I sign, But I don't think if I'd have gotten that engineering degree, it would have been so straightforward and simple. So I actually started NASA as an engineer, but doing some really fun and fascinating things because I said yes to those students who suggested it. I did the same thing. I finished my PhD at the same time I was an engineer. And then I applied to be a scientist in the International Space Station program. But then all of a sudden I freaked out and I was like, I don't want to leave engineering. I've been an engineer for 8 years. How do I back my resume out of the system, right? How do I get out of that? And I couldn't figure it out. So I left it there and they called me for an interview and I tried to shoot myself in the foot over and over again on that interview. But she, the chief scientist of the space station program, knew better. And she hired me anyway. And so that's another example of someone else seeing something in you that you wouldn't see. And I can look back at so many stories of how a network is important, but I didn't know I was building it. I didn't know that I was actually impacting these people. And people will talk about you. Your name is being mentioned. You don't even know it. She would be good for this project. He would be great. Oh, well, he's going to finish that in a few months. And so, we'll call her when she's ready. And people are talking about you. You don't know it, but they are. So that network, even for you introverts like me, I hated the word networking when I was in undergrad. I still kind of think it's a little formal of a term, but it's more like, I feel like seeking out the people who can answer your questions and you want to be honest about it, truthful. I have these questions. How'd you do it? Or what would you suggest? And so even today, I have a network of women around the agency, around NASA that I call. We talk weekly. We talk every 2 weeks. We text. We're planning a takeover of the agency, and so, you have to have that. Now I'm in my 40s, but I didn't have that network until I was in my 40s, a solid network. But I didn't know I was building it along the whole way. And so even for you introverts, just go out and talk to someone. Ask truthful, be authentic, ask questions you really want to know. Don't force it because that's not going to work either. And also respond quickly and timely when someone takes time out to, you send an email and someone takes the time out to respond to you. Well, please be responsive back. Right? Like, don't drag it out too long, right? Because busy people are going to move along and you want to stay on their radar.
Tara, one of the things you just answered there too is one of the things I wanted to talk about was if you're passionate about something, there's something you really want to do, and whether that's your career, is there only one way of getting there? What you've shown is there are multiple ways of getting there, and you've answered that. With that, then, we've all kind of touched upon networking as being so important. Andrea, if you have a 7-year-old and you've got a choice, well, should we teach them maths or should we teach them to go say hello to somebody? Which do you think would be more important in that particular moment, or, right now? What would be your first priority?
Oh my gosh. Can I say both? I feel like critical concepts like that, literacies and, understanding, transitive properties, right? You don't think you're going to use calculus in your everyday life, but you really do. Logic is super important. So definitely don't neglect your logic classes. But I think when we think about communication, we assume that people are either good at it or they're not good at it, right? It is a skill. It is something you can get better at. It exists outside of personalities, right? I too, like the doctor said, I am an introvert, but I play an extrovert on TV, right? If you meet me in person, people never believe I'm an introvert, but that's by design. That is because I know the importance of getting out of my shell and connecting with people. But if you take me to a party, I'm going to be in the corner hanging out with the dog or the cat or other animal that's there. And so you have to know yourself, but you also have to be able to flex those skill sets when you can. So much of the opportunities that you're going to be given are going to come when you least expect it, and it's going to be those one-off tiny conversations or those decisions that you make that will then have that butterfly effect into the rest of your life. I never thought I was going to get into communication. I was a business major, right? Talk to me about money, talk to me about numbers. I don't need all this squishy public speaking stuff. I didn't like it. And I said yes to taking a job in a communication department, and it has totally changed my worldview hanging out with communication faculty. I on a whim, started a Facebook group to connect a couple of my friends over here with a couple of my friends over there. And now I've connected a couple thousand friends in 76 countries on a whim on a Tuesday night that I was just like, let's start a Facebook group. I think you should meet her. It's those tiny things that you're going to do that are going to pay dividends going forward. So, take advantage of everything that's out there. Go to that event, even if you don't think you're going to know someone. Shoot that message to someone. Just ask to be in the room. I think we regret the things we don't do more than the things that we do. You might make a fool of yourself at that event. You might, be super awkward in that conversation, and it might go really, really horribly, but more likely it's going to go really great. And what if it does go well? What if that one person remembers you 5 years later at this event, and now they're on a hiring committee and they've watched your career? I will echo what Dr. Ruttley said. People talk about you when you're not in the room, especially when you're good at what it is that you do, right? It's always been who you know. The only thing that has changed is how you have met them, right? It is the power of your network that's going to be out there. And so harness that, take advantage of it. Don't be scared. I would definitely echo what Rhett said. Reach out on social media to people. You might not be able to walk into the CEO's office, at a big corporation. You're probably not going to get through that front desk security person, but you can tweet to them. You can get acknowledged, slide into their DMs and send them a message, connect with them on LinkedIn. It is easier than ever to get that FaceTime. And if you approach it in a professional and, deferential way, reaching out to them, hey, Rhett, I saw your lecture. It was really inspiring. I would love to, take you for lunch or meet you for coffee and hear you, what advice you would have for someone coming into the network. They might say no, right? That might happen. They might be really busy people with not a lot of time, but they might also say yes, because how many other young people are doing that? So take advantage of it. It might be scary. Throw it out there, see what happens. It could be amazing.
That was just amazing. And I agree, wholeheartedly agree. Me and Rhett often, we've talked about networking, and driving taxis for me as a student was the best form of networking. You connected with so many people around the world, and the people who didn't want to talk to you, if you got them to talk, that's it. Job accomplished. That was your tip for the day. Sarah, when you graduated, and you were standing on that graduation podium, what was going through your mind at that moment in terms of the future?
Well, I unfortunately didn't get that because of COVID. So when I walk in December, that will be like a big thing because I haven't been there yet. But at graduation, it was really devastating because you work so hard, for that one moment to walk across the stage to be recognized. And a couple weeks into your semester, they're like, okay, well, we're going to go for 2 weeks. We'll be back. And then all of a sudden you're in your last in-person class ever and you're never going to see these people. Well, most likely, you know, you're like, okay, well, that was the last time I sat next to Joe in science or whatever. And so it is really hard that, and you're looking for jobs and all these things. And I had interviews set up, I had plans, and all these companies went on hiring freezes. So I think that when, you know, I got a real wake up call when my name was announced on TV and my name flashed on the TV, you know, as I was sitting on my couch. So I really think that my mind was moving a million miles a minute, kind of like, okay, well, where do I go from here? You know, like how can I possibly put myself out there right now? How do I always say too, when I was 18, I transferred to Florida State as a junior because I did that whole community college thing, you know, dual enrollment in high school. And I kind of got here and I was like, oh my gosh, I have 1 year left to figure out what the heck I'm doing. And I have no experience with things that I want to have experience with. And so, yes, getting through college quickly save some money, you know, but you can never buy those experiences that you have, and not even just in college experiences, like professionally and personally with your networking and things like that, and who you meet in the dorm next to you along the way or something. And so I would just apply, you know, I'd start applying for internships that I didn't even, you know, that sounded a little appealing. And I wound up becoming a mock interview mentor at the Career Center at Florida State. And I would help students prepare for upcoming interviews that they would have, you know, how to dress professionally, things like that. And at the beginning I was like, okay, who am I to give advice to another 18-year-old about interviews when I just got here? And so, but it turned out to be one of the best things. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It helped me grow so much. And so the last 2 weeks of that internship, right before graduation, COVID hit and all this stuff. And they were like, hey, well, we have to go online and on whatever the heck Zoom is, this random thing for the last 2 weeks of school. So I had to learn how to use Zoom, conduct my interviews on Zoom. And I met one girl who I got to speak with for like 30 minutes after her interview was over, and she wanted to go into sports broadcasting, which I had been very interested in, you know, in high school and early college. And so we got talking. She connected with me on LinkedIn. I never actually heard from her again, but she did see my graduate school post on LinkedIn, and her best friend worked at the Alumni Association, was graduating, needed a new graduate assistant. And that's the only reason that I got that job, is because I connected with one person because of one interview, because of one internship that I just threw myself out there for. And so I think that those experiences that I had, you know, really, really like helped me, because I was like, okay, if I can meet one person on LinkedIn that connected with me, then I can meet who the heck can I meet on social media, you know, that has an opportunity for me. And so that led to full time at the Alumni Association later on, just started in April. And so I think I was nervous. A lot was going through my head as graduation was going through, but with all the experiences that I've had with uncertainty in the past, I think that helped me a lot.
So if you captured that moment on video, and often people do, and you capture it on video, what would you say to that person? Or if someone was like, I asked you, what were you thinking now that you've gone ahead? You know, what kind of caption would you give to that person to say, hey, I know these were the things you were worried about, but the truth is, these are my skills. And this is what I'm able to accomplish. Like, I'm just getting something here that, you know, we've talked about getting yourself out there. And it seems to be that kind of limiting factor or step into getting, but it's not an issue of, are my skills good enough? Like, how good are you?
That's a very loaded question. Yeah, well, like I said at the beginning of this, you know, it's such a learned process. You know, I'm 23 years old. The amount that I've learned in the last year is absolutely insane versus, you know, what I've learned through high school, through the beginning of college and things like that. Because I feel like the beginning, you're really just trying to figure things out and get through your classes. And then when you really get into it and you get into working full time, doing graduate school full time, you're really, it's just a learning experience through all of it and through like everything is in life. And so I think if I would have captured that moment, I think I would have been really pale. in the moment. I would have been a little nervous, but now looking back at it, it is so crazy to think about. It is so crazy to think about the connections that I've made, and that I don't want to say that I was nervous for nothing, but that, when do your plans ever actually go accordingly? When do your plans ever actually work out the exact way that you want it to work out? And so I'm getting my certificate in agile project management right now. And that's all we talk about. It's roadblocks and it's having objectives, but being okay if your objectives change throughout halfway through your project, and adapting through that and learning through that, because that might make for an even better project down the road. Like, okay, well, this didn't work, but oh my gosh, imagine if we did this later and how great that would be. And so, and if I would have stuck to whatever I wanted to do with these jobs before graduation, I probably would be working here right now. And I probably wouldn't be about to graduate with my master's, because I was planning on just, going to work and figuring stuff out. But because of COVID, I really did have to just throw myself into it with, knowledge of the program, but really no background on anything else, just kind of doing it as I went. So I wouldn't probably be sitting here talking to everyone right now if that was the case. So it's crazy how things work like that.
Rhett, going on what Sarah said, and the reason why I positioned that quote, sorry, Sarah, I'll put you on the spot there, but it's not the talent or the ability for young people, especially with all the information around them, that willingness to experience and try more and be more adventurous. In terms of leadership, I know we look at young people and leadership and entrepreneurship, but the people with the organizations, the people who are already there, what kind of leadership are they going to have to take to accept these changes coming along, to listen to people like Sarah when they're in these organizations? What is it going to take from them to allow these change makers to change the world?
Well, first off, Sarah, I love what you talked about there. I think you should always be willing to maybe quit, to take another opportunity, to look at sort of your future and say, I want to try a bunch of different things before I settle in on something that I'm going to do. I think, taking your time to figure out what it is you want to do in life and where you want to go, and having a broad range of experiences. I mean, I've quit so many jobs to take others that were going to help me grow, that I think you've got to be willing to just go out and take a chance. But to answer your question, in terms of, how does leadership have to change to sort of adapt to the new realities? I think that we have to understand that I mean, I think it's fascinating now where we're seeing that employees and people have a whole lot more leverage than maybe they used to even a few years ago. I think that's really interesting. I think that forces leadership to acknowledge, the new work realities, and maybe have better policies for remote work, maybe have better policies for flexible time, for where people work, how people work, the times. I think, again, going back to my son this summer, he could work his own hours. And so I think we have to, as leaders, open our minds to a little bit and open our sort of traditional thinking of what work is and how we're going to lead and how we how our teams work together. And if we don't do that, if we don't adapt to the new realities, if we don't sit down with people like Sarah and say, what is it you're looking for in work? What is it that resonates with you? What's going to keep you here? Because one of the things that's also a huge issue right now is retaining people, retaining talent. And we talked about good people and how we talk. Well, not only do we talk internally, other people outside of our organization are talking about that person and saying, hey, what can we do to get that person to come work for us? And so if we're not having that conversation as leaders as to how we keep our good people, and how we change the way we think and our mindsets and our mental models about what work really is and how we lead, your organization is going to fail, right? I mean, it's just fact of the matter is, if you look at the Fortune 500 and and the sort of the business apocalypse that's going on, where, I mean, Fortune 500 after Fortune 500 company is dying, and they're getting disrupted by these smaller companies who are more agile and more flexible and think about things a lot differently. You're going to get disrupted. You're not going to survive if you're not completely rethinking the way you do things. So, and that goes to, talking to people like Sarah and bringing them in and saying, hey, what can I do to keep people like you? What can we do to rethink things? And asking that advice, and like getting off your high horse and getting off the, taking the CEO hat off for a little bit and putting on that listening, and truly trying to understand what it's going to take.
Absolutely. I agree. I think it's not just about entrepreneurship. There's intrapreneurship. I know Dr. Irina Yashin Shaw, for example, she talks about that and how not everybody's going to go and open a company, but that doesn't mean they can't innovate in what they already do. It doesn't mean that they can't go and revolutionize something, because the truth is they already have the skills. And does it mean that they then need to go out of the organization to do that? Hence, if that's the case, the organizations need to look at backwards. How do we keep these fantastic people? So I'm going to come to you, Tara, because we're going to come to the section called Voices from the Field. And this section specifically has been something we've created, and I want to give credit to some fantastic ladies who spent yesterday telling me, you know what, you should make this section Voices from the Field. And it's about looking at the best practices, the key learnings from experts like yourself, as well as people like Sarah and other graduates who also are just as influential and will make a difference. So, Tara, I'm going to start with you. We're in space, we're in Mars, there's all this great stuff happening. William Shatner got into space as well, so that's fantastic. And I can't wait to interview him. But with all this happening, humanity as a species now really has got to that pivotal moment where we've gone outside our sphere of influence in terms of being on Earth. So, with your passion, how should one elevate their voice? How can you use your passion to elevate one's voice and make a difference and make it matter?
I think the way that you elevate your voice and make it matter is through knowing yourself. First of all, understanding who you are, finding the adjectives that you would use to describe yourself. It's being introspective. A lot of people, we think we know who we are, but we're just moving through, right? Some of us are so good that we really do think we know who we are because we're on social media and we're influencers and we talk about ourselves all the time. That's great, but others of us don't. And some of us are so busy focused on our studies or the next step that we don't take time to be a little bit of introspective. So for me, it's about constantly asking, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Am I happy doing what I'm doing? And if I'm not, how can I change that? And as you heard, it's not a bad thing to change that. But everyone needs to recognize that they have a voice. And I will say, okay, so I've been at NASA 20 years. Yep, I've had a voice. When I say something, it usually matters. I've been parts of teams and have been asked, to follow a mission and implement a mission. So I figured it out. Then I got 2 or 3 years ago, I moved up to the chief scientist's office at NASA. And I moved out of a big team of a mission focus to a small office. And I go, okay, what's next? What are we doing? And no, it's not about them. It's about me. I create, I take the lead. I have the ideas. It's me, right? Now I'm in the lead. I've kind of been a leader along the way, but truly this is a point where you have to sit there and go, oh, they're waiting on me, to come up to lead. So, even if you think you've found your voice and you always have agency, being able to communicate that in a way that's professional, where people want to follow you, where that's diplomatic, that's empathetic, and in harmony. I like to maintain harmony with folks too. And then, part of elevating your voice is also being willing to listen to So listening to what other people think about you or what other people have to say about you or what they're saying about your work, being introspective and being able to communicate that which you are. And that's really hard. It's not the easiest thing to develop when you're just fresh out of grad school. You've been focused in your work and you just want to get through graduation. And now you're focused on getting that next step job or higher education or whatever that is. But take a minute. Hey, even start with a personality test, right? Those are kind of fun. And then just breathe and just start creating who you are in a notebook or in meditation or in prayer. Just find some quiet time to understand yourself.
Amazing, Tara. Thank you so much. Sarah, voices from the field. You're a recent graduate. What advice would you give to someone who's in a remote corner of the world, completely different country, doesn't have a network, but does have access to social media?
Mm-hmm.
How should they elevate their voice and make it matter?
Yeah, I think what Tara said is really, really hit the nail on the head, because I think that accepting feedback from other people, going to other people, because other people see things about you that you don't know about yourself. Like, oh, you're really good at that. You're really good at this. And I'm like, what? That just can't, it came naturally. That's just how I am. Okay, but you're really good at that. And so I think that, if you have access to social media wherever you are, video content is just absolutely blowing up. And I've been having to learn about that so much and adapt and adjust to that in my field. And so if you want to make yourself heard and you want to express who you are through video content, I think would be my biggest piece of advice, because I think after COVID too, people are tired of staring at things on the screen. They're tired of reading. How many books did people get through being locked in their house? They want to be entertained. And so I think that's why TikTok is such a big platform right now and things like that. And so I use TikTok as the example, is that people are connecting with others through TikTok all over the world and in different countries across the US. And it's crazy. And the things that they're showing and the things that are being more understood now because of video and things like that, and because of TikTok, because it's firsthand. It's not like, oh, I saw this on the news. It's, oh, I saw a boy who lived in, another country and this is what was going on and X, Y, and Z. And oh, he's an amazing singer, or he's a really good artist, or his dog can paint. You know what I mean? Like his elephant can paint or something like that. And so I think just expressing yourself through video content these days is something that can really elevate your voice in a new and unique way, because it can be through so many different things. It doesn't even have to just be speaking. You don't even have to talk in the video. It can be something totally silent, but it's still a new and unique way of getting your voice out there and elevating your voice.
Amazing, Sarah. Thank you so much. I agree. Video is such a powerful medium. So, Andrea, coming to you then from what Sarah said, video being so powerful. So let's use that as the medium. And you could be anywhere in the world. How would you suggest you use video and your network to elevate your voice?
Yeah. So this is a really neat opportunity, because you have an opportunity here to showcase a few different things. Not only yourself and your personality and your expertise, right, in what you're going to say, but you also have the opportunity to learn a technological skill here, right? People go to school to learn filmography and how to speak on camera and how to be a good public speaker, to speak without saying to speak without those verbal tics, to be engaging on camera. So those are things that typically most students don't get in their coursework or in what they're interested in, unless they happen to be a YouTuber or they're on TikTok. They're not necessarily learning that information. So that is a skill set that you can teach yourself from watching other people, from YouTube, from taking online classes, LinkedIn Learning, that sort of thing. You can learn that as a skill set, and that will be ancillary to what you're also talking about, right? Learning how to create a video and it's well lit, learning the editing side of it, whatever you have access to, whether it's just a simple editing free app on your phone, or you're using iMovie, or you're using the Loom Chrome extension. There's all this technology out there. Choose to become good at one of them and use that when you're building out your materials, right? Make it easy to be found but also make it easy to tell your story, right? Video resumes are becoming a thing. Talk about what you're interested in. Talk about the courses you've taken. Let that passion and that excitement for your discipline shine through in that video. Make that connection with the other person and make that video as quality as you can. Most cell phones nowadays shoot incredible video that we could not have imagined 15 years ago. You have the same tools in your hand. You've got a great microphone, you've got a camera. Use what you have. Start with where you are, and you're going to get better over time. You're gonna do something once, 3-6 months later, you're going to change it up. You're going to redo it because it's a learning process. And so, don't be scared of the technology. Use it as much as possible. You're going to learn it by using it, and put things out there. You know, do you have a website for yourself? Do you own your own domain name? Do you have a video resume linked to your LinkedIn where you're talking about the job that you're looking for? Do you have a presence on YouTube? Do you have, you know, a Behance profile if you're a designer? What do you have out there? How are you showing off what it is that you bring to the table? And are you making it easy for that hiring manager or for that other person to find you?
Yeah, and can I add to Andrea's comments there? Because I think a lot of times people want to see what others are doing and emulate others. But the most important thing I think you can do is be yourself, because this is a long haul. Like whatever you put out there on your video or your CV or your resume, whatever you say or do is a long haul. You have your whole life ahead of you. And then you will have more fun being you rather than being someone else. If you're more comfortable just being yourself. The first time I was asked to ever give a press briefing at NASA, the first thing I said to my public affairs officer was, okay, how would my chief do this? Let me think. And he goes, why? Why would you do it like her? Do it like you. How would Tara do it? And that just took the edge off forever. And it's been that way ever since. So authenticity is who you are, man. You got a long way to go. So be yourself, be comfortable.
That's it exactly. Because what you're doing is think of your job hunt like dating, right? If you are someone different in your materials and then you get here and I'm expecting this person, but really you're really this person, you're not going to have a good time. We're not going to hang out, right? It's not going to be a good fit role wise. And the company's not going to do well with you, and you're not going to do well with that company, right? If you are who you are unapologetically yourself, right? The best professional version of yourself, right? You're going to attract opportunities that are going to be a good fit for you. If you are someone else and you're trying to put on this persona, you're going to attract opportunities that are a fit for this imaginary person, and it's not going to go well. Life is too short to go to a job that's awful, right? It doesn't have to be your door. So be authentic. It really does help.
I would just caution on social media to be aware that people look at it. You know, I've made hires and unfortunately had to let people go because of what is on social media that didn't reflect the values of my organization. And so, you know, be aware of the profile pictures you put on LinkedIn or the video you put up on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. You know, that stuff, once you put that stuff out in the digital world, it's out there. And so just realize people make assumptions about your image and about who you are based on what you post. And so you do have to think about it. I mean, it's just reality. Just like we make instant assumptions about people when we see them face to face and even virtually. We can't help it. And so just realize that that's just a fact of life, that the impression people have of you is really, really important. And what you put out there is going to make them think one thing or another. And so we all have those biases. And so just realize that you know, it doesn't mean you can't be who you are. It doesn't mean, but just realize that you are forming an impression. And you know, I can't say this enough to my kids and the people I work with that are young. Our lives weren't videotaped or on video like they are now. And so everything you did in high school, everything you put out there when you were young is probably going to come back at you at some point. People are going to see it. But just realize that it is a thing. It is a thing that you have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Going off that real quick, it is a very real thing. And I feel like when you're in college and things, you get warned about that by professors and things like, be careful, employers look at your social media, and they really do. When I was younger, or sorry, not younger, when I was a assistant, one of my jobs was when we were hiring people was, okay, yeah, we have 2 candidates left. Go stalk them on social media. Go look at their social media, and then we'll pick if that's going to be the deciding factor. And so, yeah, like you said, be yourself. But also, people are watching you. People are watching you on social, as creepy as that sounds. They are watching you on social media. But with that, I have an exam to go take. I hate to leave this conversation. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you guys so much for having me. But back to reality for me real quick to go take an
You
exam.
got this.
Thank you guys so much.
Mentioned, seem at
just
have an exam. So
one other quick thanks, Sarah. Goodbye, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye.
It was great to have you. It was great.
And in that vein, I would say we see so much of this now in the expectations we hold our companies to, right? Gone are the days where you could be a company and be whoever you want, right? Your values, your persona, your brand is out there. Consumers are judging you based on that brand, based on those values, right? We've been exposed to things we didn't know about a long time ago, right? And so if consumers are expecting it of brands, be aware that brands are going to be expecting it from their employees as well, right? Are you walking in your truth? Are you who you say you are? What is that image that you're putting out there? Brands and companies are being judged for it. Individuals are going to be as well. So double-edged sword, right? You have all of this, opportunity, but that comes with responsibility, right? The internet is written in ink. Even if you think it's private, even if you think Snapchat deletes your messages, it is on the internet. It is forever. It is findable somewhere. So take that, it's an opportunity, but there's also responsibility that comes with it.
Just realize, just realize you don't have privacy. When you put it out there, you don't have this, you're giving people permission to see it.
No, anything you write, assume it can be read on the front page of the newspaper. Because even if it's an internal company document, how many times a day do we see something has been leaked, something has gone out, you thought it went to your 5 closest friends and someone screenshotted it, right? You don't know. Once you put something out there, it is those other people's to do with as they will. And so that's been the cause of many a lawsuit.
This is the exact conversation I've had with my team for years. Yeah, you too, Rhett. Yeah, it's a whole new generation.
It is, and it's something that we're learning as we're going through it, right? We're in the quicksand with you, and we've never had this problem before. We've had this separation, this boundary between our private and our public, but we don't, right? If you're outside, you're on camera, 150 times a day, they estimate, if you're just out living your daily life, being caught on camera somewhere. And so it's a new reality that we're all coping with.
So when you have this platform of power, use it for good and be aware of know your presence. Yeah,
definitely.
Rhett, your voices of the field question, with everything the ladies have said, 3 men have accomplished so much in their lifetimes. Jeff Bezos, Branson, Musk, they've all entered space. That's just 3 in the last 10, 15 years in what they've done. We know these incredibly talented young people, graduates now who are coming out, are going to do fantastic things. They're going to do great things. Of course, they've got big challenges for them. What key takeaway or advice would you give them right now? We know they're going to have success. We know it's going to be a hard road, but what would you say to them now to do in this next decade to make sure that not only do they follow their passions, elevate their voices, but also make sure they are responsible with some of the things we've heard?
I mean, it sounds a little trite, I think, but and it's easy for people to say, "Oh, go follow your passion or follow your, just go do it." It's not that easy. I guess what I would say is always ask for help. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to say, that was a failure, and have to start over. Sometimes I know in one of the first businesses I ever got in, we held on way too long, right? And we should just, it wasn't going to work, and there wasn't anything else we could do to fix it. But we were holding on for that hope, and realizing when something's not going to work, that to make that pivot or that shift. I think that's what I would say. Just realize it's not going to be easy. It's going to be bumpy. It's, as Tara was talking about earlier, that path's not going to be straight, right? It's things are going to be unexpected. Have grace, have empathy for others, patience, but have a grit. Never lose sight of what it is you ultimately want to do. And although the path may be really twisted to get there, if you never give up that hope and that dream, you may have to go down a different path to get there, and it may take a while. But just realize that it's going to be, life is bumpy and messy, and that's actually the beauty of it at the end of the day. Try new things, try it all. Nobody wants to sit at the end of their days on their front porch in their rocking chair and say, well, what if I'd done that? What if I'd done that? What if I'd done that? Give all of it a try. Isn't that what life's about? And I know that's all tried it when you're 22 or 23 and you're coming out of school and you got all the stresses of life that are getting, this is a 50-year-old perspective, but I know that's hard to, like, you're like, okay, whatever. But that's the truth. Like, don't be afraid to try new things, and just I think that's the best thing I could probably say.
That's praising. This discussion, I think, for a lot of people, especially when people rewatch it and see it, I hope there's a lot of things they take away. But the most important part for me from all of this, be yourself, but don't be afraid to get out there. Yes, be responsible, but still aim for the stars, because it is all possible. You have the tools, you have the means. And as we talk about communication, it's not something that can't be learned. You can be an extrovert, you can be an introvert, but there's no reason why you cannot effectively communicate your passion, your skill set, and what you're capable of, especially with all the mediums. And with that, we're going to draw this to close. Thank you so much for everybody. We've had people from different countries joining this. And I think one of the key things that I feel is important right now more than ever, if we can get to space, and sorry, Tara, I'm going to use that, but if you can get to space and then we can get to a space station with different people from different places around the world, we can definitely solve some of the most complex problems just by coming together, regardless of which race, religion, background, color, ethnicity you're from. And I think that's one of the most powerful things effective communication can do. And with that being said, please do join us. For all of you watching, this series is a series of panels with experts, like you've heard them, who'll be giving their insights, as well as having people who they're supposed to be giving the insights to, people like Sarah and other young graduates. We've got a workshop series that will start in November. Do check it out. We'll have the links up after this, where you can go and check it in the comments, where students are going to apply and get selected, because we have a number of places, and they can go through a workshop series this November, and they get to craft their stories. Everything we've talked about here: how do you effectively network? How do you effectively communicate? How do you get that message out there? And we're using video as a medium, so you will craft your own video story, and your workshop leaders and the people who are working with you are going to be part of that journey, and they're going to be there to support for you to craft that. So if you're interested, then please do apply. It's going to be fun. And for anybody else, whether you're a student, an entrepreneur, intrapreneur, or you're still finding your wings, do join us. Enjoy the sessions. Take what you like, and anything you don't like, that's fine as well. Thank you so much for joining everybody here. Tara, Rhett, Andrea, and Sarah, if you do watch this when you're back, thank you so much. You guys were incredible, and really look forward to working with you over the coming weeks and months and taking things forward.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for viewing. Bye, guys.
Thank you. So everybody, I'll send the links. Thank you for joining us. Without you, this doesn't happen. Good night, take care, and see you soon.